Hello, hello. Welcome to Minds on Mushrooms, where we're unveiling the magic behind psychedelics for mental health and addiction. I'm your host, Maggie Kirkwood. Thank you for joining today. I couldn't be more honored. We are sitting down with Karin Calde, who is coming from Portland, Oregon, and is actually serving psilocybin legally. So I'm just so thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much for your time. There's lots to talk about. Let's start. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you found yourself on in this psychedelic realm, and then maybe we can talk about the steps that you needed to take to get to where you are to be able to help people legally, which is so fantastic. Thank you, Karin.
Yes, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you, Maggie. I, I have been kind of a self development junkie for much of my life and became a psychologist many years ago. So I've had tons of therapy
Okay.
and love to read self development books, but I had never tried psychedelics when I was young. I was pretty above board in most things except for maybe some weed every now and then, but had never done psychedelics and didn't understand why anyone would do that. It seemed, I'd heard all the stories and all the myths and didn't understand it.
Yeah. How they can fry our brains. I just remember
Right.
that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that having these scary experiences where you'd want to jump off a building and those types of
Yes,
stories that we would hear, right?
you're right.
And then Michael Pollan's book came out in 2018,
How to
and I
Change
was,
Your Mind, is that Michael Pollan?
yes, How to
Yeah.
Change Your Mind. And I had been a big Michael Pollan fan. I had read a few of his books, and so I decided to read it, and I was absolutely fascinated and captivated, and thought that this would maybe be something that would be helpful to one of my kids when he
Okay.
was older, because he's got some rigid thinking that can be really challenging for him. And but then there was that part of me that was like, but I'm also really kind of curious for myself. I'm not sure what I would get out of it, but I'm curious.
Sure.
And then I found a local psychedelic society fairly easily,
Mm,
went to a meeting, met some really wonderful people, and connected with a guide or a facilitator.
okay.
So I really didn't know what to expect. We met once beforehand, but I didn't really know what questions to ask, and there was no kind of real structure to it. But she talked about helping me set my intentions, and I had a million. I had a million things
Right.
that I wanted to wanted to ask and know and discover. And at the time, I was just going through a divorce,
Okay.
and I knew it was going to get difficult. And so my guide came over and she sat with me, and I had a lot of anxiety going into it. I
Mhm.
just remember I was wearing the wrong clothes. I was wearing
Oh, no. Yeah.
jeans and they felt so uncomfortable.
Mm,
And I felt like I was just wanted to jump out of my skin and felt just this intense anxiety.
okay.
I just remember like go toward the anxiety, go toward it, don't run away, just face it. And I kept on trying to tell myself that. And eventually I just entered into this plane of bliss.
Wow. So, did it go straight to bliss, or did you have to work through some things? And also, I'm curious as to dosing. Do you remember what you took in your first guided experience?
I'm pretty sure it was 4 grams.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
no messing around.
right. So, was your first experience profound in any way? When you say bliss, was it kind of like these feelings that are, I don't know, the self love, the self discovery, this? tell us more about the bliss that it brought
Yeah.
you.
So it really did go from this intense anxiety and discomfort into, at some point I just realized, yeah, it was just a bliss. And I felt like I was being held.
Oh, wonderful.
And I felt like I could really see the cosmos,
Mhm.
and felt like there was, something greater than me that was going to be helping me through this. And I hadn't felt a spiritual connection to anything since I was probably in middle school,
Oh,
when
wow.
life got really hard for me and I experienced loss after loss after loss. And I
Mhm.
just kind of, well, there is certainly is no God if I'm experiencing
Hmm.
something like this. And so, I used to be a little kid that would pray every day at night.
Mhm.
And not that we went to church or we were really a religious family, but I believed in God, to that point.
Yeah.
And this experience wasn't about God necessarily, and I still don't really believe in that kind of Christian sense of a God,
Mhm.
but it really did open me up to there is something more.
Mm. Um, yeah, I love to hear that, as I can relate. I very similarly younger, went to Lutheran church. It was more of a, I guess, experience, let's go to these church camps and bond with friends, but never really felt any depth to religion. And then, yeah, psychedelics have completely opened that door for me, and it continues. And I just, yeah, to me, it's really special to have faith in something larger than myself. And I'm very thankful to psilocybin for opening, that acknowledgement, I guess, in my life. Um, so you had this experience, and was it kind of like you knew from that point that you wanted to be involved in kind of understanding and knowing more about psilocybin and psychedelics, or
To a certain degree, I stayed in contact with the woman who sat with me, and I also had an MDMA experience with her.
okay.
And so I kept learning more and more. And as I went along, I became more and more interested in working with it. But it really did
Mm,
take me a while to actually get to that point where I decided I was going to do it. And mhm.
oh, sorry. I wanted to backtrack. I love to hear about all the experiences. Can you talk to us about your MDMA journey and some differences, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that first one, I'll just also say that I really had this sense that everything was going to be okay. But because I had all of these intentions, all these things I wanted to accomplish, I felt like I was jumping around in the experience a lot, and I didn't
Mm,
go really deep. And I
mhm.
thought that was an important lesson for me going forward. So in my subsequent experiences, I was very intentional about setting one or two intentions, and that really helped me get more out of the experience, even though I got a lot out of that one as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a sidebar there. Just having people on the podcast and talking more about other people's experiences, and trying, it is a to stay intentional and not hop around. I mean, we've got our whole lives to explore and understand more. Um, there's a lot of talk about writing one word on your hand. So, kind of like one word that sums up your intention or a few intentions to stay on track, if you will. And I have sat with psilocybin with a word on my hand, and I would say it is definitely helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And then the MDMA was really different. It felt to me, not everyone likes MDMA, but a lot of people do.
Mhm.
And it's not something that I continue to do now, but for a little while I did it a few times, and it really helped me understand myself better.
Okay.
I went into that experience wanting to understand why I would get so triggered at even the slightest hint of rejection. At the time I was looking for a job,
Oh, okay.
and every rejection just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I would get depressed and feel like I was in this black hole for days.
Mm.
And going into that experience, and it showed me my sisters. I had two sisters, and we were on our back deck, and we were with our little hibachi grill, grilling marshmallows, and like, okay, yeah, this is what happened to me when I was a kid. And
Mm,
then, and so it showed me all these this happy times when I was younger, and then it showed me all the losses.
mm.
And I was finally able to put it together that all those losses made me super tender and sensitive to rejection. It brought me back there.
Oh, I see, okay.
And
Ah,
and then it also showed me why all the things that happened later happened, like these situations I would find myself in, because I felt so lonely as a teenager, so
mm.
lonely because I was still trying to fill that hole that was left when I was younger. And so I would put myself in these situations that were really dangerous, and so some bad things happened
Oh, I see.
that were really awful. And
Mhm.
so I could also then understand why that happened. So it really helped me put like this overall narrative to my story and help me understand, my experience now.
Wow. When you were sitting with MDMA, was that a guided session or
Yeah.
solo? Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Did you find yourself? I view MDMA as such this heart opener, and was it a lot of conversating, or was it a lot of sitting and you know, with the visualizations being revealed, a little both, I suppose.
Little of both, but mostly sitting with an eye shade
Okay.
on. My facilitator, she would actually be in the next room for most of it. But
Okay.
then she'd come in and I'd be wanting to talk, and then she'd encourage me to go back in. So that
Hmm.
was good. That was really helpful. Uh, yes, it is absolutely a heart opener. There was another time when I remember I was on it, and I did it by myself, and I
Hmm.
was texting my kids, "I love you so much."
Uh, yes,
Yeah.
I call it, oversharing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, put the
Um,
phone away when you do
yeah,
this
yeah,
work.
I learned that mistake, trying to have a heavier conversation,
Mm,
but a little too loose lips sink the ships, they say.
yeah, yeah.
But no, I think is such a beautiful medicine. Really, when you were talking about entering your first psilocybin journey and all of that anxiety and the buildup, and you've never done it, and I think, from my perspective, MDMA is a much more gentle, not so trippy and mind
Right.
boggling. So I'm pleased to hear that you've experienced both. Um, so you started, yeah, let's take it from there. So then after MDMA, you were kind of just understanding and exploring and discovering more about yourself and learning more about yourself. And yeah, where did that lead?
So, one of the most important places that led me to was deeper therapy. It opened
Mm,
up therapy for me. I had felt really stuck. And now that I had this insight, I was able to really dive in. And I was doing IFS at the time, internal
okay.
family systems work,
Oh,
which
okay.
goes beautifully with psychedelics, really,
Can
really beautifully. Now I'm trained to do it. So
can we
it's really
talk about it?
wonderful.
Just I don't think we've brought that up on the podcast yet.
Sure. So it's interesting. I am going to forget the names. I get them confused. Is it Midhofer or Groff or someone who is it Johns Hopkins?
Oh,
Anyway,
okay. I'm
I think it
familiar with
was
Johns Hopkins,
I
but
think it was their team that found that when they would be working with people, and I think it was specifically MDMA, people would spontaneously start working with their parts under the experience. And so
okay.
what that means is they would be, talking to these different parts of themselves and working things out without even
Oh,
knowing about IFS.
okay.
So IFS is a model, a parts model. So essentially, it says that just like families that we know of that are external families, we have these internal families too.
Okay.
We have these really vulnerable parts that perhaps were shamed or hurt in some way when we were young. And so these protector parts emerged to make sure to keep those painful feelings and keep those exiled parts down so that we don't feel that pain. It's too
Sure.
much.
Yeah.
And so these protectors come out, and they might be responsibility parts, or class clown parts, or
Oh.
drinking parts,
Oh.
or drug addiction parts, or
Mhm.
there's all kinds of parts. We have A lot of us have these strong thinkers
Mhm.
or self-critics, all parts of us that are trying their best to protect us.
Mm.
And they are really helpful to us, and they've gotten us where we are today. But because they developed when we are young, they continue to use these very young methods and can get us into trouble. And our
Mm.
protector parts really never get us what we really want. And
Okay.
so, if we can work with them and then gain access to those exiled younger parts and do some healing,
Mhm.
it can really change a lot for us and go a
Wow.
long way to help us heal and grow and connect with those that core self of us, that is loving and curious and
Mhm.
compassionate and creative and all of the beautiful things that we want to be.
Yes, wow, that sounds, very fabulous, especially if used in conjunction. So, perhaps psilocybin or medicine, we know it obviously eases us into scratching these layers and I guess essentially discovering these parts. The more I'm in this world, I'm starting to just think about, I guess, traumas or the suppressed stories and traumas and everything just being kind of lodged in the body, and whether it's through a psychedelic release or somatic therapy. Yeah, I was having conversation with someone who has actually like built up so much armor, so much trauma has happened to this person. Um Terrible, terrible things for years, and she's just now, tapping into wanting to heal, right? And um, I'm just sharing this. It's just kind of fresh story, but she's been having trouble, like even getting there, getting or being able to surrender essentially to the
Oh, yeah.
medicine. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, I feel that, ultimately we know that medicine is just a tool, and then we have to meet it and we have to be able to work with it. But I think discovering some of these other forms of therapy, like you're discussing now, in conjunction is so smart. And obviously the integration piece, which you're all over. So do you actively use, what was it called? Internal family systems with your clients as well as medicine?
For those who want to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I don't only do psilocybin work, I'm also a relationship coach, and
Oh,
so I'll also use IFS with couples or individuals who are interested in doing that kind of work and really learning to work with their parts.
wow. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about the road to becoming licensed with psilocybin.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I had several experiences, learned from every single one. I had experience where I felt this intense self-love, which was maybe the most important experience I had because I still can tap into that feeling.
Hmm.
I've had ones where I never launched.
Okay.
I had ones where I had one particular experience that was extremely challenging, and
Mm.
I learned a lot from that, and that has really helped inform me now as a facilitator.
Okay.
Because during that experience, I had a lot of uh, concerns about safety, essentially.
Okay.
And I had a friend sitting with me, and she knows psychedelics, and I trust her, but she didn't have that in depth knowledge. She couldn't really answer those questions that I had. And so there
Mm.
was a part of me that was really trying to hold on, that was scared. And
Okay.
so I couldn't let go. And I was
Yes.
just fighting it the whole way. And I took a really big dose. I took like
Right.
5 grams that time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so now I really understand, uh, at a gut level, at a body level, what not being able to surrender can feel like,
Mhm.
and how important it is to be working with someone who can answer all your questions and work with
Mhm.
someone who you fully trust, and so that you can let go and
Sure.
have the kind of experience that you're seeking.
Okay.
So that was a big part of becoming a facilitator for me. But I had, dabbled into of these groups of people who were learning about becoming facilitators, but I didn't really see a clear path for me at the time. And
Mhm.
so I thought, well, maybe this just isn't for me. Maybe this isn't my road.
Mhm.
And then I went to a networking event about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, and I met someone who had recently become licensed in Oregon.
Oh, okay.
And I was just on them and so excited and had a million questions. And I went back home and I thought, I really want to do this, but I need to take time with this decision.
Sure.
So I really went back and forth with it for a while. Is this something I want? It's a big financial investment to get
Oh,
trained.
wow. Wow,
And
okay.
so that was a big part of the decision too. So I eventually decided to move ahead
Mm.
and um, yeah, and had a really, for the most part, really good experience getting trained. Really loved a lot of my the teachers and my coworkers or my classmates. I got
Sure.
to know them, and so I did an intensive 3-month program, and it
Okay.
really was very intense. There was a lot of stuff that was crammed into that period of time, but learned from a wide variety of people. People working at NYU,
Oh, okay.
especially in the addiction world,
Mm.
doing
Mhm.
a lot of those studies. She was absolutely fabulous. I worked, one of our teachers taught a couple sessions on the neuroanatomy and how um, psilocybin works on the brain. Manish Gurn, he's also
Mm.
the psychedelic scientist. He's really wonderful if anyone wants to look him up. So had some really great experiences and working with with different populations, especially marginalized populations, was a really big emphasis in the program that I went through, and that was important to me as well.
Wow.
So it
Oh,
was a good experience.
can you mention the name of the program?
Yeah, that
Or
was the Chenga Institute.
okay. Um, and so how long have you had your license and actively been practicing?
So I got my license at the end of March, I believe it was, right at the
Oh,
end of
okay.
March.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so yeah,
And clearly, this is all possible because in Portland, Oregon, uh, it is legal, right?
yes. It is legal in Oregon and now in Colorado too. Just
Okay,
recently. They're not quite set up yet in Colorado, but they're getting closer. Yeah.
okay. And it's legal for the entire state of Oregon?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, I just have some questions. I think, so I'm in Minnesota and I think that we're making good progress. I'm in Minneapolis where psychedelics have been deprioritized, not decriminalized just yet, but deprioritized in the city of Minneapolis. And then we have Governor Walls who put together the Minnesota Psychedelic Medicine Task Force. I think he's very busy these days, but I hear that they're working really hard to. I think they've done all of their research and they're putting together some recommendations and something by January. So I don't know how that all works, but I feel in my heart that we're kind of, a little progressive here. So I think some of the worries when people in the community are talking about a legal model and we had talked off screen, I was just assuming that that always meant that we would be using synthetic psilocybin, and I hear you don't, and that's very promising, and it makes me thrilled to hear that it's not synthetic psilocybin. But do you know, how do they get around, like, regulating, I guess? Or is it just kind of, or can you talk to me about where the mushrooms are coming from?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and I hope I can answer it thoroughly. But there are different labs, and you
Okay.
have to be licensed as a
Okay.
lab
Oh,
to be
nice.
growing the mushrooms.
Mhm.
And then there is one place called Rose City Labs that actually tests and
Oh,
they do their best to test how much psilocybin, because psilocybin is actually a prodrug, so it is not the actually active ingredient. It
mhm,
gets converted in the body to psilocin,
okay.
and so they measure how much psilocin is in and psilocybin is in the mushrooms. And so
Oh,
they
wow.
try to get a pretty good idea. And they measure it differently. We actually try to measure it so that we're measuring the actual psilocybin content in the
Oh,
mushrooms. So it's not, by grams, it's by micrograms or
okay.
sorry, milligrams. Sorry,
Milligrams, yep,
milligrams. And so, yeah, they do this testing to try to get an idea of, and it's not perfect. It's far from perfect.
sure.
But, and then they also, a lot of the labs or the manufacturing sites will, package these mushrooms in, maybe a combination of different kinds, like 3 different kinds of mushrooms
Okay.
in this package. Yeah.
Do you know any of the main varieties that you're using with your patients?
Oh, I should, but different service centers use different ones. They
Okay.
use different
Yeah.
manufacturers, and the main place that I've been working, they just switched recently. Like there was like a South African
Oh,
variety, I
wow.
believe.
Yeah. I'm just curious.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, it's good to hear that
yeah,
there's so many and
there are
it's
so many. There's
it's
over 200 varieties of
wow.
mushrooms contain psilocybin.
And the names are all so fun.
Yeah.
Um, I would like to hear more about so with your practice and when you're working with people, how much of your session involves I guess I like to think of like uh Eastern medicine meets Western. Do you do any clearing of the energy in the space? Is sound involved? Can you kind of like walk us through? And is it something personal to you and other facilitators? I'd love to just hear more about that and what maybe like a session looks like if somebody's coming to work with you.
Yeah, it really does depend on the facilitator and on the client.
Okay.
So I really marry the two. I think I have a good blend of a science background, but also a little bit of woo and spiritual sense to me. So most of the clients that have come to me have been more interested in the scientific background. So I haven't really gone so much in that place of, bringing crystals and using, different, sage or different things to
Okay.
clear the
Mhm.
room. But I do have my crystal singing bowls,
Oh wow.
and I'll bring those. Last client I worked with was really interested in me playing that for a little while and can be helpful to a person's
Mm,
experience. But I really leave that up to the client. It's
okay.
really their experience. But what happens is, I'll first do a free consultation with the client to make sure we're a match. We spend a good 2 hours on preparation, a specific preparation session, and then a follow up one as well to
Mhm.
talk about dosing and other questions. And then I meet them for their administration day.
Okay.
So it's a process. And
Mhm.
I'll meet them at a licensed facility because that's where it has to happen if you're doing it legally in Oregon.
Yep.
And then I meet them in the morning and they take their mushrooms. I don't touch the mushrooms at all.
Oh,
I
okay.
am a facilitator.
Mm,
So, legally, I can't touch them. So there are people at the service center who will help them, and then the client actually, opens the package and puts it in their tea or orange juice or
oh,
applesauce,
I see. Okay.
their
Yep.
lemon tech or their chocolate,
Yep.
and then they consume it. There's an opportunity to take a booster dose if it
Mm,
turns out not to be quite enough for them.
mhm.
One opportunity.
Right. When do
But
you usually offer your booster?
between 45 minutes and an hour.
Okay.
So that's also legally regulated too. That's law in Oregon.
And how is dosage just the same, or how do you determine dosage per folks?
It really depends on the
Okay.
person, and that's part of the work that I do. And one of the reasons I spend so much time with a person is so that we can go through their history. I
Mhm,
understand what other medications they're taking, if they're taking SSRIs or
mhm,
SNRIs, other types of what we call blunting medications.
mhm.
over the counter medications and other supplements can also interact with mushrooms. And so that's a really important piece of information that I get from people.
Mhm.
How sensitive are they? How nervous are they? What kind of experience are they seeking? All
Right.
that together
Mhm.
informs my recommendation for how much they take.
Got you. And would you say, are you hoping to be working with people on a kind of like one and done? Like, this is going to be so profound. We're going to, or do you ever offer like a multiple session working program, I
It's
guess?
largely up to the clients.
Okay.
Um, if they want to have a multiple session, I haven't done that yet, but if
Hmm.
there's one actually in the queue that is potentially interested, but I want to know their reasons
Hmm.
and help them think through that to see if that's really the best thing for them.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Um, I think for people who are really nervous, if they can do a two dose sequence, that can be really good
Hmm.
because it helps them get a sense for what this is like
Hmm.
on a lower dose. And then they can often feel more confident than having a higher dose, perhaps a week or two later, and having that bigger, more profound experience that can, for many people, end up being more healing and helpful.
Sure. And do you see full spectrum ages, men, women coming? Well, I'm sure you have to be of age, right?
Have to be
21,
21.
21. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, men, women, all types of things that they're
Mm,
seeking, different diagnoses, no diagnoses, wanting to grow. I've seen someone as young as in their 20s, and then my oldest client has been in their upper 50s or
yeah.
late 50s, and then I know there are others who are 75.
Wow.
Yeah.
um, and are you busy? Are people coming and knocking?
Um, it's been a little bit busier in this last month,
Hmm.
but I the the field is pretty flooded. There are a lot of facilitators,
Okay.
and so I'm lucky to be partnered with two service centers. I think there are a lot of facilitators who
Mm,
actually aren't working with one, and so you can't see clients. Making sure if you contact a facilitator that they actually are partnered with a place is going to be really important. So flooded, no. I know that a year ago, when the program just opened up, there were there were lots of clients who were interested in, and even those really seasoned one
mm,
year 1 year seasoned facilitators have noticed quite a slowdown, and I think part of it is getting the word out.
okay.
There's a lot of people who just don't know that this is available
Right.
and the potential benefits of it.
I was going to ask, even though you're actively practicing, but do you see that there's been a shift with the stigma, or is that still sticking around?
There's definitely been a shift.
Okay.
There are more people who are open to it, especially when they realize how much research and how many higher, institutions are involved in this work
Hmm.
and the profound healing that happens. I mean,
Right.
it's just
Yeah.
the things that I've been able to see people experience is just incredible. And I think, how could anyone deny this person, this healing opportunity that they've had? I mean, it's just been amazing to witness, and I just always feel humbled and
Mm.
honored to be able to do it with people.
Yeah, that is so special. And I mean, hopefully soon and hopefully one day, but I think it is people just like yourself. And, thankfully you're able to do this legally. But yeah, talking about it and spreading the word and normalizing it is a huge piece. I think at some point I would love to, do you market yourself? And if you do, we can call out your site and have people take a look. And I think it's really exciting, especially in these parts, or most parts, where we're not able to legally practice as you do. It's such inspiration and hope. I mean, to see somebody who's it's bringing joy to you and your vocation. So I love hearing that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So, real quick though, do you have a site for people to check out? And can we mention it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm at my website is drcalde.com
Ooh,
backslash psilocybin. So
okay.
drcalde.com slash psilocybin. You can also find me on Instagram where I'm Wildwood Facilitation. I'd love for people to follow me there. That'd be great.
Awesome.
I do put out some informational videos to help people understand, what this experience is like and whether or not it's for them, who it might be helpful for.
Wonderful. And always, as always, for the listeners, we will have those noted in the episode details. I just wanted to touch so, psilocybin facilitation is just one aspect of your career. What else do you, I don't know, what else do you practice in?
Yeah. So I'm a relationship coach.
Okay.
So I work primarily with women and couples in midlife
Mm,
who are either looking for love or trying to figure out how to make their relationships more rewarding
hmm.
and also find, more of a connection to themselves. A lot of
Have you,
people, yeah, a lot
sorry.
of people are just really disconnected with themselves. And so a lot of that work is doing that as well.
I I I agree with that, and I was just wanting to interject, I guess, with couples. Are psychedelics a possible solution for? Yes. Do you have anything that you can talk about? I often, and I've said this on the podcast before. I'm recently divorced, and I think about, well, darn it, what if I would have had, accessibility to some of the medicine versus drinking myself into a drunken stupor, facing those conversations and learning more about myself and what I need, I guess. Yeah. So any stories or any something talking with relationships and psychedelics to share?
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of work can be done individually or it can be done together.
Mm,
But there have been some studies, and it's just in the early stages in regards to relationships, but have shown that those who use psilocybin find that communication is better with their partner, sex is better with their partner, they're less neurotic. So, and also those with anxious attachment,
mm,
there's been a small study that showed that those who use psilocybin, especially paired with therapy, um, found that most of their symptoms went away. They,
wow.
yeah, that was really encouraging. Those with avoidant styles didn't do as
Mm,
well,
hmm.
but
Okay.
those with more of the anxious styles really did well and had good experiences with psilocybin and found it really helpful.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it really is just so magical, isn't it?
It's incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible the range of things that it can help people with. Absolutely.
Yeah, I find it, I mean, really just by talking about it constantly, but I mean, we're talking eating disorders, I mean, every day it seems like I was just talking with another guest who's been working with adult autistic people to
Mm,
help crack open and you know help them
tell
to
them.
feel safer if expressing their emotions and connecting with people, and it's just like, damn, um well, and you also are a podcaster, right? You have a podcast.
Right, that's right. I have a podcast called Love Is Us, exploring relationships and how we connect.
Ah, I'm gonna have to check that out, and we will also have a link to that because I love to promote all the things. um It's been so great, and I'm so happy we had a mutual kind of friend on Facebook who kind of connected the dots between us. And like I said, it's just like thrilling for me to have you here and pick your brain, um, because it's such an inspiration. And I can just see in I was checking out some of your social media things, and it really just seems like a very special practice that you've put together. And it just sensing this just warm profound things are happening, and I bet it just makes you so happy to be able to offer such things. So good for you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for spreading the word. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you and your podcast, and, yeah, we need to be talking about this. So, thank you.
Yes. Well, it's all about continuing the conversation. So I'm happy to have you back. Maybe we'll have a check in a few months or something. Or when things hopefully trend in the direction of legal or decriminalization, I might have some questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to chat more.
Alrighty, well, this has been so fun. I really appreciate your time, Karin, and I'll be sure to provide the links so people can check you out. And you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you, Maggie. You too.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining the journey. You can tune in to Minds on Mushrooms on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.